What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to a normal episode of The World According to Briggs. I am Briggs, and I want to be the wind beneath your wings. Actually, no, I don't. No intention of doing that. I did watch that Bette Midler movie last night where she sang that during quarantine. Yeah, the song stuck in my head. Anyway, moving on. What I want to do is be your virtual tour guide of some freaky places in Europe. I did the mysterious places in the US video last month and got more than a few requests to do the same thing about Europe. So I will. That's what I do. There's a lot of different types of mysterious places. Some are natural, some are man-made, maybe haunted, aliens, some have secrets, some just can't be explained. Europe is a lot older than the United States, so they've had more time to get freaky with their locations. If you thought the United States had some weird and mysterious places, buckle up, it's gonna get strange. Make sure you stay till the end too. That being said, in no particular order, here you go. The mysterious places of Europe. Number 10, the Crooked Forest, Poland. Now, before we get into this, I will tell you up front, I will mispronounce some, if not all of the places on this list. It's not my strong point. I do apologize in advance. The Crooked Forest is located near the town of Grafino in West Pomerania, Poland. The 400 pine trees were planted somewhere around 1930. Each pine tree bends sharply to the north just above ground level, then curves back upright after a sideways bend of 3 to 9 feet. Nobody knows for sure why these trees are like this. It is believed that some form of human tool or technique was used to make the trees grow this way, but the method was never determined and remains a mystery to this day. It's been speculated that they'd made them this way, kind of deform them to create some naturally curved timber for use in furniture or boat building. Others think it was a snowstorm that blew them down and then they recovered and started growing straight up again, but there's little evidence of that. Now, the most plausible explanation for this is that during the invasion of Poland during World War II, the trees were sapped and tanks drove over them. And after the tanks were gone, years went by and they started straightening back up again. So that's probably the most realistic one, but nobody knows for sure. It is known to be one of the weirdest natural landmarks to be seen on the planet. And a lot of other people think, hey, they're Polish trees, what did you expect? Number 9, the Hoia Forest, Romania. This forest is located in northwestern Romania. It's about 250 miles away from Dracula's castle. Yeah, he was real. Wasn't a vampire and didn't turn into a bat, but he was twisted and cruel and he killed a lot of people. The forest is only 729 acres of land and it's known as the most haunted forest in the world. It is believed that peasants were killed in the forest clearing hundreds of years ago and now the whole forest is just a mess with ghosts and spirits and all that stuff. The forest has gotten much of its attention recently because the Travel Channel show Ghost Adventures, they filmed there. And there are many legends about this forest. One that's extremely popular is about a young girl vanishing into the forest and returning 5 years later with no memory of what happened. I think she was just trying to ditch school. That's my opinion. Some visitors say they leave the forest with an uneasy feeling, nausea, anxiety, feeling of being watched is a big one, and they also get weird rashes. That'd keep me away right there. I hate having a rash. Other people say they're just fine. This place is great for people that love nature, history, and mysterious places that'll scare the hell out of you. You can hike, bike, and get a day or night tours. A lot of the locals won't go into the forest at night, but you can still, find someone to give you a tour. The forest has been famous since the late 1960s when a military technician caught pictures of a UFO above the forest. That clearing where all the peasants were killed is known as the scariest part of the forest and Romania. Number 8, Loch Ness, Scotland. Loch Ness is a large freshwater lake in the Scottish Highlands and has the largest volume of freshwater in Great Britain. The body of water reaches a depth of nearly 800 feet and the surface of the lake is about 23 miles long. And it may have a giant monster that spends a lot of its time hiding from people with good camera equipment. The only people that ever have seen to get pictures of this thing have flip phone quality cameras and below, all the way back to the 40s and 30s. This one was a big deal when I was a kid and I was into it. I always wanted to go visit Loch Ness and my 7-year-old head, me, a pair of swim fins, and a snorkel could find this thing without a problem. Sometime before I was born, around 500 AD, locals carved an aquatic creature into the stones near Loch Ness. This is believed to be the earliest reference to the monster in the lake. At one point, there was an Irish missionary or monk, whatever you want to call him, that showed up to rid the area of a creature that was killing the locals. It is believed that this was the earliest documentation of the creature. So it and its stories have been around for almost as long as Betty White. Just kidding, I love Betty White. It's been around a while. The best known article was in 1933 when a couple claimed to have seen an enormous animal rolling and plunging on the surface of the lake. After 1933, the lake became well known, and from then on, rewards were made if someone could capture this thing. In 1934, a famous photograph seemed to show a dinosaur-like creature with a long neck emerging out of the murky water, leading some to speculate that Nessie was a solitary survivor of some long extinct species. The theory is that the Loch Ness Monster could have been frozen in the ice for thousands of years and eventually became unfrozen and made his way to the surface to do some water ballet or something. Others believe this monster was a primitive whale with a serpentine-type neck that was thought to have been extinct 18 million years ago. Despite the lack of conclusive evidence, the Loch Ness Monster remained popular and profitable. In the early 21st century, it was thought to have contributed $80 million annually to Scotland's economy. Yeah, a mythical creature scored them $80 million annually. That's a lot of dough for a mythical creature. So, do you believe in Nessie? Leave it in the comments below. Number 7. The City of Dead, Russia. Known as the mysterious village of Dargvas, this ancient burial ground holds the remains of more than 10,000 people, many of whom are still there with their clothes and their belongings. I guess they never heard the phrase, you can't take it with you. Some locals believe that anyone who dares enter this freaky little town won't return alive. Since the 16th century, this remote stretch of southern Russian farmland has been used as a burial ground. Its origins are unclear. One theory is that after the place was trashed in the 13th century by the Mongol Tartar invasion, locals living in the valley began to create above-ground crypts to conserve farmland. Another theory suggests that the City of Dead was created by the Indo-Iranian tradition. Samaritan migrants came up through this way, and I guess they just picked up that tradition and started storing people above ground. Today, there's 99 curved roof crypts with single window. All of them have one window. It's really weird. Some of the corpses inside are so well preserved that the flesh is still attached to their bones. Yeah, that's a little gross. One other theory is that the burials were made due to a plague that swept through the area and killed the population. In order not to infect their neighbors, the sick, with the whole families and children and everyone, went to these pre-built crypts and never came out. They survived on meager rations. Sometimes people would bring them food or whatever. They just eventually died there and were left to rot in the huts. Kind of scary, kind of gross. Number 6. Stanton Moor, England. This forest is one of the most creepy and amazing forests on our planet. It's also home to some mysterious Bronze Age stone circles, sort of like a low-budget Stonehenge. The forest was considered a sacred place where druids held their ritual hoodoo guru stuff. There are a few different places in the area that have rocks with ancient carvings, including the low-budget Stonehenge, which is actually called Nine Ladies. These days, it is the most visited national park in the UK, attracting millions of people every single year. Nobody knows for sure, but the monoliths are believed to have sacred significance and to be associated with druid worship. The area has been occupied since at least the Bronze Age, so you'd think someone would have, passed down a couple stories about what this is all about, but no. Due to the increased number of visitors, it has led to erosion on the moor, and a lot of the original markings have now faded away, taking away any possibility of learning what these really meant. The landscape with Neolithic stone circles and burial sites made this one of Britain's first official ancient monuments. It's kind of weird when you start reading up on the Druids and stuff like that. Druids were weird. They believed that the men were the ones that had the magical power and could do all the rituals and the praying, so if they went to combat, they sent the ladies. The dudes would stay back in one of these little stones and do some praying. I read a thing about that. There's all kinds of stories about them, but that one always stuck with me. Number 5. The Ghost City of Ukraine. Pripyat, Ukraine was founded on February 4th, 1970 near the Ukraine-Belarus border and was the 9th nuclear city in the Soviet Union. It was built to serve the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It turned into a ghost town on 26 April 1986 when a deadly accident occurred at the nuclear power plant and everyone quickly left town. The site remains relatively untouched, which makes it extra spooky. This place was evacuated in such a rush and so few people have visited since, it looks like it's been frozen in time, other than, grass growing everywhere and vines and trees sprouting up. Just imagine seeing children's toys, clothes, and their belongings scattered all over the place, and you'll realize what I mean. You can take a tour of Pripyat, but don't stay too long because it's got high levels of radiation to this day. The most notable landmark of this city, and it's kind of spooky and freaky looking, is the Ferris wheel located at the amusement park. That's still there. A lot of the rides are still sitting there. Haven't moved in decades. Both Chernobyl and Pripyat have been deemed safe for tourists to visit since 2010. However, tourists have been screened before they visit and check for radioactive particles after they leave. So it's a big to-do. You just can't go driving in there. Tourists have also been told not to touch objects that have been cordoned off and not to sit down anywhere. In 1986, the residents only had 3 hours to evacuate the town. All clocks are frozen at 11:55 the moment the electricity was cut off from the power plant. But if it's something you want to see, you might want to go, sooner than later because the forest is overtaking this city again. Number 4. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. Göbekli Tepe is a series of mainly circular and oval-shaped structures set on top of a hill. Known as the oldest temple in the world, Göbekli Tepe was built around 13,000 years ago by primitive Neolithic men. Composed of several temples, Göbekli Tepe is considered to be the most ancient temple on the planet. It's even older than the pyramids. The pillars are as high as 19 feet tall, and they are extremely heavy. They weigh about 60 tons, which gets people wondering how the site was constructed. Back then, you couldn't just rent a crane from someplace. You could try, but someone might hand you a bird if you asked for a crane back then. And the bird can't lift 60 tons. Its legs are too skinny. According to one theory, primitive man received help from ancient alien civilizations to build the temple complex. Yeah, that makes sense. Intelligent beings are going to jump in their interstellar spaceship and travel light years to help some dudes in loincloths move some rocks, and then just head back home. They leave and Miss Loincloth shows up, freaks out because that's not where she wanted the 60-ton pillar. She's been reading a lot about that feng shui stuff, and this is all wrong. And now that dude's out there making crop circles, hoping he can, signal his alien friends and come back and help move the rocks to where Mrs. Loincloth wants. Yeah, I've been married a while. I know how it goes. It is said that this archaeological site is rewriting our entire understanding of human history. It was built right around the same time that the last ice age ended. It remains a complete mystery as to how ancient man managed to accomplish the transportation and placement of such large stones. This excavation has been ongoing since 1996. They've been there a while in the desert, kind of the desert. Göbekli Tepe is one of the most important archaeological sites in the world. Some researchers claim this was actually the biblical Garden of Eden, which, I don't know. The Garden of Eden to me always seemed, like tropical. This part of Turkey's like dirt. Some stones display carved foxes, lions, bulls, scorpions, snakes, wild boar, vultures, waterfowl, insects, and arachnids, which are spiders. There's also some abstract shapes and one of a naked woman posed frontally in a sitting position. So, these ancient dudes were into porn back then. Wow, that's kind of weird. Yeah, this whole thing's really, really weird. I went down that Google rabbit hole and read far too much about this one. Number 3. Stonehenge in England. Located in Wiltshire, England, this prehistoric monument consists of a ring of standing stones, each around 13 feet high, 7 feet wide, and weighing about 25 tons each. It is believed that it was constructed sometime around 2000 to 3000 BC, and it could have been a burial ground from its earliest beginnings. They're not sure what it was actually used for. Deposits containing human bones date back as early as 3000 BC, and historians estimate that it was in use for somewhere around 500 years. The stones were transported a distance of 20 miles from the north of the site. The smaller ones, weighing about 4 tons, they figure came from several different sites in western Wales, having been transported about 140 miles in some cases. It's unknown how the people actually moved them that far. Recent experiments show that it is possible for a 1-ton stone to be moved by a dozen people on wooden trackway, but whether this technique was actually used by the ancient builders, they don't know. It is also believed that an ice glacier could have actually moved these stones somewhere in the vicinity, and then they didn't have to move that far. But that one's, really not, I don't believe that one at all. Anyway, I'm not going to get too far on this one because it's been talked about to death on the internet. And I mean, it's stuff I'd just be going over. Everyone knows it. But it is a really weird place. I had to include it in a Mysterious Europe video, or the comment section would catch fire with angry Brits that can't go to the pub right now because of the coronavirus. They would just be lighting me up. What about Stonehenge? What about Stonehenge? So there it is. Stonehenge at number 3. Number 2, Brandcastle, Transylvania, Romania. Brandcastle is a national monument and landmark in Romania, commonly known outside of Romania as Dracula's Castle. The castle was completed in 1388 and was built for the purpose of defending Transylvania's border. The writer Bram Stoker, not Bran, it's B-R-A-M, not B-R-A-N like the castle. Anyway, Bram Stoker was the one who created the story about Count Dracula. Stoker had never visited Romania, but he did a ton of research about Vlad the Impaler, who was an evil ruler in this part of Romania. So the mythical creature of Count Dracula is somewhat inspired by Vlad the Impaler, who is sometimes known as Vlad Dracula. This was a horrible human being. He was insanely cruel to his enemies and any of his people that got out of line. Every form of torture and defilement was used by this dude, in a lot of cases in front of their whole family. When he went to war with the Ottoman Empire, his army was ordered not to leave anything alive when they came across a town or a village. Anything. And he had some strange obsession with impaling people. That's how he got the nickname. He'd stick people on poles and hoist them up and plant them in the ground. And I'm not going to show you that. If you want to do the research on your own, look it up. It's pretty disgusting. Anyway, he would always have people on these poles wherever he attacked and around his own castle. I like having landscape pictures hanging around my house, and this dude apparently liked to put people on sticks. I don't know, to each their own, I guess, right? So, as you can see, this guy was a piece of work, and with a little artistic license, the world has Count Dracula. Now here's the twist. It's got all kinds of memorabilia of his and all kinds of information at the castle. But it's not his castle. His castle's someplace else. Because of the location of Brandcastle, its dramatic architecture and connection to Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Romanian government decided to market the castle as the real Dracula castle. This isn't Vlad and the Impaler's castle, but the whole area has some pretty scary history that includes this dude. It's kind of a weird story, but yeah, that part of Romania and Transylvania, they had some twisted times. But it's still a great place to buy some, like, real estate if you're, I don't know, a psychic or a ghost hunter or something like that. And number 1, the Catacombs of Paris, France. I mean, obviously France. There's Paris, Texas, but I don't think they have any catacombs. They do have a fake Eiffel Tower, but hey. The Catacombs of Paris are an underground ossuary that holds the remains of about 6 million people in part of a tunnel network. This was created in an effort to eliminate the city's overflowing cemeteries. The cemeteries in Paris back then were in bad shape. In the 1700s, mass graves within the city became commonplace, like holes with 1,000 people in them. Yeah, that bad. The history of the Paris catacombs started in the late 18th century, when major health problems tied to the city's cemeteries led to a decision to transfer their contents to an underground site. The businesses in the area also started complaining about the horrific smell of the dead bodies within the cities. Even perfume stores said they couldn't stand the smell. How bad would that be? You own a restaurant not too far from a cemetery and nobody's showing up because all they could smell is dead people? Yeah, that'd be rough. The catacombs were open to the public in 1809, by appointment only at the time. They'd done some renovations and it was cool for tourists to go down there, and it's been a tourist hotspot ever since. It took them 12 years to move all the bones from into the catacombs. Some of the oldest bones date back 1,200 years. The city stopped moving the bones somewhere around 1860, and it's been kind of like just this thing people go to ever since. They've found people living in the catacombs down there and all kinds. There's parts of the catacombs that for the longest time mapped out. They didn't know they were undiscovered in a way. What is the deal with the French? If they aren't inventing things like guillotines and mayonnaise, they start stacking their dead relatives in the city's drainage system. Weird. But Paris is a beautiful city, so, you know, even though this is kind of weird, still a cool city. Alright, so that's our video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I have a little poll right up here in the top right corner of your screen. It looks like a little white circle with an eye. Click on that, answer the poll, and, you know, we'll see where we go from here on videos. Anyway, everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.